guys, motocross action is here and we have a beautiful 1994 Honda CR500 two-stroke below me right here. This is Yariv Konski's bike. So if you're from Australia, you definitely know the name Yariv. If you're in America, you've probably heard of him as he's owned the Muc-off Honda team that Justin Brayton rode for back in 2021. Big time Honda guy in Australia. He has a collection of bikes that he loves. And this is kind of like the last puzzle piece of the bikes that Yariv was looking to own. And so this bike was built by Nathan Alexander, one of his mechanics here in the States. He went all through this thing. It's beautiful looking, something that I'm pretty new to, being only 25 years old. CR500's something I've never ridden before. I've ridden one in a KTM frame, but I'm excited to ride this one in the steel frame, the original frame that it was made for. So this is one of the coolest parts about the job, getting to ride exotic bikes. I'm super excited to ride this bike. In this video, we're gonna be talking about all the details on this CR500, built by Nathan Alexander, owned by Yariv Konski here at Glen Helen. It is surprising, but 500cc two-strokes have actually gotten more recognition over the last 5 years than they have in the past 3 decades. How come? There's a two-stroke revolution happening around the world and everyone is wanting to either build, ride, or watch a nostalgic sounding 500cc two-stroke. This CR500 video comes in a little mini series that the MXA Wrecking Crew is working on. We have this video on the CR500, we'll have another video on a 2000 Kawasaki KX500, plus we'll have an extra video, kind of a bonus, a KX500 project bike versus a KX450 4-stroke, and then shortly after these videos are released, we'll have a shootout video with 2 500cc project builds going head to head, the CR and the KX500. Diving more into this bike, the CR500 two-strokes last year in production came in 2001, but really this bike is more like a 1992 model because that's when Honda stopped paying attention to this bike, as the 500 AMA National Championship was discontinued in 1993 and all of the top pros focused their attention off the open class and onto the 125 and 250 classes only. This particular CR500 that we see here is owned by Australia's Yariv Konski, and it was built by Ohio native Nathan Alexander. Yariv brought Justin Brayton to Australia for his 4 Supercross championships, and he owns the Australian Honda team that does Supercross and Motocross down in Australia. Yariv also has had a satellite Honda team racing Supercross in the US for the last 3 seasons. It started out as the Penrite Honda team in 2020 with Mitchell Oldenburg being one of the star riders. Then it was Muc-off Honda in 2021 with Justin Brayton being the star rider, and then it was the Firepower Honda team this year with Jordan Smith being the star rider on the team. Nathan Alexander has experience working for an extensive list of top riders in the pits, some of those riders being Andrew Short, Blake Baggett, and most recently Mitchell Oldenburg. Nathan has been on multiple top level teams and now he's with the Moto Concepts Honda team as Oldenburg's mechanic, doing American Supercross here in the States and also going to be doing the World Supercross Championship that's going on later this year. Nathan is very respected in the pits from all of the mechanics and he is known for his attention to detail on his bikes. He spends hours day and night working on whatever motorcycle is in front of him, whether it's Mitchell Oldenburg's race bike or these beautiful 500 two-strokes. Over the last few years, we have tested multiple Kawasaki KX500 two-strokes and a few crossbreed bikes with CR500 engines inside of a KTM chassis, but this is the first true-to-life CR500 that we've gotten our hands on recently, and this thing is beautiful. The SKDA graphics were also inspired inspired by Jeff Stanton's factory 1992 Honda CR500, and this thing is ultra trick. Diving into the hard parts, Nathan Alexander made some big updates to the front end on this Honda. The CR500 forks were swapped out for some A-Kit Showa air forks from a 2018 CRF250 with EZE 22mm offset triple clamps from Australia. For reference, the stock offset for the 500 is 24mm. The front wheel and brakes were also off a 2018 CRF250, and on the rear brake, Nathan used a stock CR500 caliper, but took out the plunger and used a CRF250 style internals. The engine was rebuilt with the cylinder and head cleaned up and a 1.5mm bigger piston to erase all the previous wear and tear going on in the cylinder. The only part of the CR500 engine that wasn't new was the crank, as they're difficult to rebuild and they aren't available anymore. It was decided that since this crank had lasted for the last 28 years, it was probably good to go for a few more. The CR500 also has Electron carburetor. The transmission was treated with Sano metal rim finishes, along with an FMF pipe and silencer were added, B-Force reeds were added, and like I mentioned, the SKDA graphics were making this thing look ultra trick, and razor sharp pro pegs were used along with factory connection suspension. So let's get into the meat and potatoes. How did this CR500 handle on the track? We have to admit the chassis was actually very nimble. The cockpit on this bike was very motocross friendly, and it was surprisingly nice to turn and easy to jump. As demonstrated by test rider Ezra Lewis, our pros were able to get comfortable on the old two-stroke a little bit easier than we expected, and we were all surprised to see Ezra Lewis throw such big whips on the CR500 after just a few laps of learning the new bike. Even though the power curve on the dyno charts looks short for the CR500, on the track it seemed much broader than the numbers would tell. Most likely this was because we were able to ride a gear higher due to the powerful torque that this bike had. Our best lap times came when we lugged the CR500 around the track in third and fourth gear, and once we stopped revving it and started lugging, the feeling in our hands started to come back from the vibration, as it was easier to ride around the Glen Helen track, lugging it and being more patient with it in the corners rather than trying to ring it out like a modern day 252 stroke or 125. The bike cornered with precision, which was very impressive to say the least. Factory connection setup was on the soft side for our faster riders, but through the chop and in the corners it was great. We just couldn't slam into the face of jumps or absorb any really harsh landings or kind of overshooting or casing jumps where the forks would bottom out pretty hard. We expected the pipe springs to fall off and a few bolts to come loose, and that was definitely true with this 500 two-stroke. It did not take long for bolts to start flying off on this bike. Overall, the 1994 Honda CR500 project bike surprised the MXA testers that were lucky enough to ride this thing. Not only is it beautiful looking, but it's actually really fun to ride too. For more details on this bike, including dyno numbers, weight, and such, you'll have to stay tuned for our 500 shootout video where we put this project bike up against a KX500 project bike, so stay tuned for that. If you like this video, stay tuned to our YouTube channel and our website, motocrossactionmag.com. Thanks for tuning in. See you in the next one.